So today we're going to be talking about Immaculate Constellation. Well, people might ask, what is Immaculate Constellation? Well, according to this in the Nexus magazine of February and March 2025, volume 32, number 2, Immaculate Constellation refers to an unacknowledged special access program established to detect and quarantine the military's best UFO imagery, videos, eyewitness testimonies, and electronic sensor evidence. It features numerous eyewitness accounts from 1991 to 2022, including flying metal orbs, jellyfish-shaped aircraft, and UFOs that reportedly alter witnesses' perception of time. This public version of this report also discusses how infrared satellites captured footage of a massive 400-foot wide saucer-shaped UFO soaring out of a dense cloud. The program was discussed at a congressional hearing about UAPs on Wednesday, the 13th November 2024, and shortly afterwards, Representative Nancy Mace made the 11-page document available to the public. The information provided by the author strongly suggests that the U.S. executive branch has been managing UAP NHI issues without congressional knowledge, oversight, or authorization for some time, quite possibly decades. Well, we've seen a lot of that recently, haven't we?
We have indeed, yes.
There's so many things that they are covering up. Look at that incident in Zimbabwe. That
Okay.
was the one where this egg-shaped disc that landed outside of the schoolyard, one child saw it, and then he went and grabbed all his friends, and then 10 friends went over there, and so on and so on. They
Yeah.
interviewed the teachers, they had a psychologist there.
Yeah. Not sure where the psychologist came from, but they certainly reported that the children had seen something.
Yes, they all drew the same type of ship and creature. Yeah, that was strange. Immaculate Constellation acts as a nexus for collecting, analyzing, and disseminating intelligence on the activities, capabilities, and locations of anomalous aerospace threats that originate from foreign or unidentified sources. The collection platforms involved are a blend of tasked and untasked capabilities in low Earth orbit, the upper atmosphere, military and civilian aviation altitudes, and maritime environments. Immaculate Constellation pays particular attention to the anomalous aerospace platforms that have been developed through the study or acquisition of technologies of unknown origin by foreign nations or unknown entities. So here we go again with these unknown origins, foreign nations, and unknown
Yeah.
entities. It kind of reminds me of that Tic Tac incident because now they're saying that Lockheed Skunk Works is the one responsible for making those things and that they were using their own military to test them on. And this is why these things were appearing 80 miles away at the coordinates that the military had, that the Navy had, that the pilots had, and yet it was there long before they even got there waiting for them.
Yeah, that's right. There was an interesting development which we may remember from the mid 90s or the late 90s, when there were these sightings of this triangular craft seen mainly in Belgium, I think it was originally, and then there was identification over Scotland, which is a very weird place for these things to happen. And then we discovered that these triangular craft were apparently being flown from Machrihanish Air Base in Scotland. Now, Machrihanish is quite a remote airfield on the Isle of Mull, which is on West Scotland. These were identified as people who were living nearby the airfield and said that they had seen these things happening, these triangular craft. Now, what were they doing? Why were they suddenly testing triangular craft in Scotland, of all places? I mean, Scotland is a nice place and it's quite remote, and there are plenty of places you can go to and nobody can see you. But when you're flying a triangular craft, which is an unusual shape, and people identify it and see it, these are professional aircraft spotters who've identified it. You think, well, what are they doing there? Why are they flying it in Scotland? I mean, if you look at what's happening in the rest of the surveillance operations, we had the U-2 spy plane, we had the SR-71, the Blackbird spy plane, or reconnaissance aircraft. That's what SR stands for, reconnaissance surveillance. But President Johnson got the initials the wrong way round. when he announced it, it was SR instead of RS. Never mind. But SR-71 was the classic fast-flying surveillance aircraft. It could fly so high and so fast that it was not catchable. The SR-71 was being phased out, and there was nothing to replace it. The satellites were being developed, the Corona series of satellites and the KH-11 satellites weren't yet in operation. So there had to be an interim project. And the suggestion is that these triangular aircraft, otherwise known as Aurora, which is being funded through the Department of Defense, was the stopgap. So the stopgap between the development of the new direct link satellites for surveillance was being developed with the TR-3B craft, which is allegedly the Aurora. But the Aurora was a project. It wasn't a particular identification of one system, one aircraft. So maybe this is what was being identified. These triangular aircraft were being identified because they were the stopgap between the existing satellite surveillance systems and the newly developing satellite surveillance systems.
Yes. With these triangles, though, the Belgian UFO wave, that
Yeah,
was interesting. But there were a lot of fake videos that were going on out there. There were a lot of fake photos. There were people that were generating these, not on AI, that didn't exist then. We're
yeah,
talking about good graphics programs that you could use back then. And you had Adobe. So there were programs out there that could do that. One fella stepped up to the plate and he said, "Yes, I'm the one that did it." And he showed how he did it when he took the photo and put them side by side. Well, there you go. Yeah, that
yeah.
was how he did it. But there are a few there that have been taken with some pretty good video equipment for that time. Those images, no, you can't fake that. I had one in the first video that we did. I put a clip of it in there, and the fellow was taking the shot of that triangle from his car at night. You could see the three lights moving about. They weren't separated, they were together and they were moving like this. And all three lights were rotating like a triangle. There was no fakery going on there.
No. But it's interesting that there is so much fakery around this subject. Now, could that be because it is necessary when somebody photographs and films something that is real, that it has to be shown to be fake? So if there are people creating fake images, the immediate reaction will be, oh, it's all fake. Look, I can show you. And the fake images can be shown to be faked. You've identified quite a lot of those, Robert.
Yes, speaking about fake images and fake things that are going on, it was the same with that jellyfish UFO. That was all over the internet last year, and it
Yep,
was shown that that jellyfish was nothing more than Islamic balloons that had got loose on an Islamic holiday. They
yep.
floated over the military base, someone videoed it, and they blew the whole thing out of proportion. So there's another fake one to add to the list.
Yes, it's a matter of being able to separate the fake from the real. And because people now have access to remarkably efficient software, it's possible to do that. I mean, there's an example recently of I think it was a sort of spherical object that was supposed to be some sort of UFO floating around until somebody got the wrong picture and showed the drone above it.
Yeah, see, we showed that in the last video.
That's
That was
right.
the boogosphere. One fellow went frame by frame by frame because these fellas always screw up somewhere along the line, and you just
Yep,
have to find it in one frame. It's just like, remember what I was doing with Apollo, just going frame by frame by frame by frame by frame, and there's going to be one or two frames in there that you're going to find something in that doesn't belong there. And guess what? There's the drone right there.
yep, a drone. So fake, obviously. But why would that be necessary to do it?
Yes, why are they making such a big issue out of this? Stephen Greer and Jamie Moussan. These fellas used to have reputable reputations.
Yeah,
Now it's the whole other way around. They're known for fakery now. If you ask me, this is what I think. I think Stephen Greer had good intentions when he went in there, just like they all do. Then he starts getting into the political arena. That's where you start getting corrupted because now they're going to want to hire him to place misinformation on him, just like Richard Doty did to that one fella that drove him crazy. They were dumping all these artifacts of UFOs up on a hill, and then they were having him fly over there, and he was taking pictures of it coming back and then showing them to Doty, and the whole thing turned into a big circus, and the fella ended up going insane.
Paul Benowitz, his name was. That was who was doing the research. But why is it necessary to produce this sort of fakery, this destruction of individuals? There seems to be some sort of activity going on where if somebody identifies a real situation, whether it's a real UFO, whether it's a real piece of technology, whether it's a real anti-gravity stuff, they immediately have to be discredited. They have to be shown to be faking. You'd think
Well,
that it would be better if they investigated the reality of what they have found. There may well be anti-gravity type generation. There may well be real UFOs, but why is it so mixed up with these fakery and these hoaxing?
Well,
It,
Immaculate Constellation isn't doing people any favors either because all they're doing is collecting all of these anomalous events, images, films, photographs, and they're making them literally disappear or they're discrediting it. And I think that Dr. Stephen Greer is one of these ones who the government had finally got to because his whole shtick has moved right away from looking into the serious business of this into the more esoteric.
when Stephen Greer was doing the interviews with the whistleblowers at the National Press Club, he was doing very good work because he
Oh,
was
yes.
bringing people forward and he was protecting them and allowing them to make their comments. Now, obviously, if what their comments were reality, because they were reporting, they had no reason to do anything other than report honestly. If they were reporting honestly, and there were certain individuals, whether it's within the government or external to the government, did not like what they were reporting, they would try to discredit them by showing that they were talking about hoaxing. There's quite a lot of this going on at the moment, and I think maybe the congressional hearings will finally break through and get some reality rather than the stories, the misinformation, the disinformation, the outright fabrications.
Yes, but there's another problem that I see with that. That is when you have people that are stepping up to the plate and then they're saying that, oh, I have a friend of a friend of a friend, or I heard it from this fella, or I heard it from him. And then you
Yeah,
have someone else coming and name dropping, but the name dropping only goes to two decimal places. And then that's it. You don't know where the information came from after that. So what we're looking for is first-hand information, and this is something that these fellows do not have that are presenting this evidence to Congress. I've watched it all.
good point. It's a very good point you make there.
And not one of these fellows can come up with first-hand information. There is that one helicopter pilot that picked that egg-shaped UFO up. He will only say what happened from his point of view in the helicopter, but that's all the information he has. And the
Yeah,
only communication with the ground that he has is, yes, it's hooked up. Take it
yeah,
away. He can't see anything from his position in that helicopter. He can only see what's in front of him and what's on his sides, but he can't look straight down. He can look through the glass and the rudder pedals, but he can't really see what he's actually got until he lands. And
yeah.
then he can get out and have a look at it. But again, this is a very strange object. This is the only one that seems to have the first-hand information on it. And then you don't hear about it anymore. And it just kind of gets swept under the rug.
I wonder if that's a deliberate activity, that if somebody is reporting real events, real situations, they have to be either swept under the rug, discredited, shown to be lying, all the rest of it.
He has to get permission from an agency first. They all do.
Yeah,
Every one of them that have those clearances, they have to first write an outline and they have to tell them what they're going to present. Then the committee either says yes, no, strikes it down, this, no, you can't say this, you can say this, you can't say that. And then
yeah,
they have to make up another draft, resubmit it, and everything on the list that's okay, they could talk about. And he was saying there's ways of getting around that. It's the way you word it, is
yeah,
the way that they're going to react to it. So he says you can push the limits, you can push the boundaries, but you still have to be careful because if he said something wrong that was on that no list, he would be in a lot of trouble. In fact, he would be in jail right now.
That's the problem that they face, because if they have signed their security declarations, they do not dare go against them because they know the penalties of doing it. That's been in place for a long time. People do not like to break their oaths of secrecy because it's honorable to them that they have agreed to this restriction. They've agreed to that. They don't dare then turn around and say, oh, okay, I'm going to state things which are previously secret. It's tragic that people cannot talk about it.
I think that people might find this fascinating. This happened to me around 1982, 83. There was a party that was going on at this girl's apartment, and there were about 50 people that were on the outside balconies, all watching towards the Portman Bridge. From her vantage point, from her balcony, we could see the Portman Bridge and we could see the Patella Bridge. Now, there were a bunch of people up on the roof of the building. It was a four-story apartment building, and people were up on the roof, and they had lawn chairs. So between the people on the balconies and the people up on the roof, there may have been maybe 60 people total that were out watching this thing. And what it was a glowing orb that when it rotated, it almost looked kind of like a long aircraft carrier, but a small one. And I don't mean one of those big, huge aircraft carriers, a smaller one. What this thing was doing is it was going between the Portman Bridge, the Patella Bridge, the Portman Bridge, and the Patella Bridge. And it was going back and forth a couple of times before one of my friends noticed this. Ran out onto the balcony and he started making a big issue about it. Look, everybody, look, you got to see this. So now the people out on the balconies are all looking that way. You've got the people up on the top of the roof looking. So everybody's looking and seeing this thing zipping back and forth. Now, it's about 5 miles as the crow flies between these two bridges. If memory serves, I would say a couple of seconds. Now, that's impossible. Nothing could do that we know of. What ended up happening was a friend of mine got on the telephone and he dialed 0 because that's the operator back in those days. So he dials 0. He says, look, there's a UFO over the bridge. There's something over that. And he starts panicking. And the lady starts calming him down. And he tried to get her to get the Comox Air Force Base. The operator took down his information. When he came back out again onto the balcony, now it's over the Patella Bridge, like over on the New Westminster Richmond side. And I would say that thing was maybe 500-600 feet. Now we have a Coast Guard helicopter going after it. And you should have seen the size of that helicopter compared to that object. That helicopter looked like a peanut. And this thing was just doing circles around that helicopter. Then it was zipped back over to the Portman Bridge and hovered over the rail yard over there. It hasn't gone down. It's still about 600 feet in the air. Now it's over the rail yard, and as soon as it goes over the rail yard, the light in the rail yards all go out. All of the apartment goes black, all the power fails, everything starts going out, and we're all in darkness now. So this thing goes zipping back over from the Portman Bridge back to the Patella. And by the time it gets over that area, now we have 2 jet fighters from Comox that have entered that area. So now you have a Coast Guard helicopter and 2 jets from Comox. And then what happened is that we're all sitting there. We can't believe what the heck's happening here because we're all in the dark. Candles are lit. Everyone's out on the balcony. They're flicking their cigarette lighters. And this thing just goes poof, gone, just like that. And as soon as that thing left, all the lights came back on again to the whole neighborhood, train station, lighting, everything.
Wow.
And I have looked and looked online to try to find that, and there's nothing.
Sounds like it was a real event witnessed by dozens of people.
There was at least 60 people all together on the balconies, the whole side of that apartment. Everybody was out on their balcony, and the people that were partying up on that roof.
But surely the local press would have picked up on it.
Nothing. And to make matters worse, the friend of mine that phoned the operator to report this, the police came about an hour later. They took him away in cuffs and threw him in jail, kept him there overnight, and then they charged him with creating a disturbance, let him out in the morning. That's something you'll never forget for the rest of your life.
No, exactly. It sounds like it was a real event that had to be discredited as usual. So people get arrested and chucked in jail. That tends to silence people, that sort of activity. There's nothing, no reports, nothing.
This was in Coquitlam, British Columbia. Yeah.
Interesting. Oh,
See
there's
that
some,
thing in the
I mean,
field? It
the
was
experience I
enormous.
had
Oh,
many
I
years
know. I've
ago
never seen
when a
anything
ball
like
of
it.
light
What
appeared.
do you think it
It was in
was?
the UK. I'd been to a crop circle meeting that weekend.
What
I was
is
coming
that?
back with my wife. We were
I
driving
don't know,
home,
but it's
basically
getting
the
closer.
London orbital motorway called the M25. The position we were in, there were no street lights.
I
It was
don't
dark. It
know,
was
but
about
it's
midnight.
following us.
And my wife said to me, "What's that?" looking across me. And I looked out my
What is
driver's side
that?
window and there was a ball of light that
I
was
have no idea.
accompanying us. It was flying alongside. Now, I was driving about 75 miles an hour, which is quite routine on a motorway. And this ball of
I
light
don't
was
know,
just
but it's
accompanying
following
us
us.
alongside us. And
What is
eventually
that?
it gradually moved across the windscreen. We both watched it moving across. Now, I'm doing 75 miles an hour, so this particular ball of light must be doing at least that. It's moving slowly across our line of sight. And we watch it, and it goes up over the bank of the freeway, the motorway, and disappears. We thought, what did we just watch? It looked like a flying light bulb. It wasn't blinding, it was bright. It was in front of us. It looked like it could be about 3 inches in diameter, quite small, about the size of a tennis ball, maybe a bit bigger. Anyway, we thought, oh, this is interesting. I wonder what we just seen. We got home. The next 2 days later, the local papers published a picture of a crop circle which appeared about half a mile from where I actually live, in East Grinstead, in Sussex, in southern England. They published this photograph of a farmer who was bringing his crop in. This was by end of July, August time. He was cutting his crop down and he came across this crop circle in the field. So he climbed up on his combine harvester and took a photograph of it, which he sent to the local paper. That's what I was watching.
And then we get back to this Immaculate Constellation. So these guys are really using a lot of technology. And the problem is where is it all going? Now we're back to the good old USG, the US government. The USG maintains imagery intelligence, IMINT databases accessible to personnel with appropriate security clearances and mission need. These databases are scattered across various organizations and services, leading to a fragmented ownership structure. Fragmented is an understatement. And then we get to this one incident here. It's called CENTCOM, cuboid formation of metallic orbs. Once again, on our friendly USG network, there exists daytime FMV and daytime FLIR footage of a formation of 12 metallic orbs skimming the ocean surface at high speeds before dispersing into multiple directions. These orbs were between 3 and 6 meters in diameter. In the opening segment of the footage, the 12 metallic orbs flew in a tight cuboid formation. The metallic orbs were in three vertical square formations of 4 orbs each, arranged in a three-pronged configuration, creating the illusion of a cube shape at distance. All of
Yeah.
the orbs were white hot against the black cold ocean in the FLIR footage, and each sphere created a faint atmospheric distortion both around itself and as a heat shimmer contrail. The metallic orbs moved in this cube formation over the ocean for some time before rapidly breaking formation as pairs.
Wow.
And here we go again with these fast moving observed transit over sensitive facilities called CENTCOMs. The oval UAP is tracked flying low over the open ocean at high speed before the track is lost. Doesn't that remind you of what was going on in New Jersey last year?
Yeah, it does. Exactly what's going on.
Funny
Yeah.
how you don't hear about that anymore, do you?
No, it seems to have vanished. There was a lot of activity around at the time. These big drones, size of cars. I mean, where did that come from?
This one fella made a drone to look like a flying saucer, and he flew it from his backyard, hovered it over a shopping mall, took off again, and then flew it around the city by a high rise building. Crazy stuff.
Hey, it would be. That'd be good.
But it just goes to show you that these things exist. Humans build them.
That's what one has to separate.
Well, that's just it. That's why we're here. We're here to separate the fact from the fiction.
Yeah, fact or fiction, that's what we call it. High strangeness. I think it's a very appropriate title, that one.
And once again, on our friendly neighborhood USG network, there exists infrared footage and imagery of a grouping of vessels engaged in signet and massent collection at night in a specific area of the Pacific Ocean. In this footage, which was in close proximity to the vessels, a large equilateral triangle UAP suddenly appears directly over the ships. Three bright points are seen at each bottom corner of the UAP, which is observed to slowly rotate on its horizontal axis. This rotation partially reveals a horizontal bar of sweeping lights. Intelligence analysis associated with this event specifies that the equilateral triangle is a reproduction vehicle and concludes that the vehicles must have been aware of the RV's frequent use of those coordinates due to the foreign preposition of advanced collection assets at the exact time and place. Well, that just goes right back to the Tic Tac incident, doesn't it?
It does.
They knew
Yeah.
precisely where to be and when to be at the precise time that those jets were going to arrive there.
Yeah. It's like they had a prior knowledge of it with some means.
And then we have Ross Coulthart. He says that those Tic Tacs were nothing more than technology produced by Lockheed Martin Skunk Works. He says that they were testing them on their own military to see how the military would react to them.
Well, how do we know that? That's the point. People can say that. There's a report here in this article. Southcom, Tic Tac detected by space asset in proximity of vessel. On USG networks, there exists OPIR imagery and massint of a Tic Tac UAP transiting through an area of the Atlantic Ocean. The Tic Tac maneuvers at an altitude at or near local cloud cover, and correlated electromagnetic signatures were collected by massint in the available footage of the Tic Tac UAP transits rapidly through the field of regard as it transits the ocean. What does that mean? No observed reaction is seen to come from the vessel, but its proximity in time and space to the trajectory of this UAP suggests foreknowledge of the UAP event by intelligence. That's interesting.
Whoa,
Somebody appeared to know in advance it was going to happen, which ties in with what you were saying about manufacturing it. So they were testing it.
this is what Ross Coulthart says. He's adamant about it, and he says he has the evidence. So we'll see about that. But you know what I find interesting is that it always goes back to the USG. The United States government maintains a database of intelligence collected by military personnel across a plethora of topics. Why aren't we seeing any of these things? Why aren't they digging into this more? You would think that these people would be bringing this to Congress and that they would be looking into it more. But every time I watch one of those congressional interludes, as I like to call it, the people that they're interviewing, they always say, well, I could tell you in a SCIF, which
Yeah,
stands for Sensitive Compartmented Information Facility.
very secure facility. Cannot be listened into.
Oh, no, no, no. This is guarded against electronic surveillance and data leaks.
But why is it necessary to have everything so secret? Interesting, the conclusion in this article in Nexus magazine, the conclusion is the official disclosure of the existence of non-human intelligences, NHIs, and their presence on Earth is a pivotal moment in human history. The nature of this information is of such incomparable relevance to the public good that it demands to be shared. Some may object and say that disclosure at this point in time poses too many risks. To them, it must be said that we will never be able to predict how individuals, families, communities, and nations will react to revelations of such magnitude. Moving forward, we must guard against the lure of authoritarian solutions justified by expediency and appeals to national security. The good in humanity will always triumph through time, and it is in moments of crisis that our capacities for achieving the extraordinary are discovered. Be not afraid. 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 Afraid.